Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webinar titled Establishing a Decision Model Center of Excellence, brought to you by Knowledge Partners International, the thought leader in the field of business process management, decision modeling, and requirements. I'm Michael Gross, and I will be your moderator. With me today is our presenter, Ravi Singh, Vice President of Strategy and Projects at Knowledge Partners International. Ravi, good to have you.
Good to be here, Michael.
Ravi is responsible for defining company strategy and overseeing the company's projects and engagements. Prior to coming to KPI, Ravi was Business Rules Director at Freddie Mac, where he was responsible for creating a business rules infrastructure using iLog, building decision architecture to adopt the Mortgage Industry Standards Maintenance Organization, also known as MISMO, Loan Delivery Specification, and leading the effort to create and build the first business decision management system, Sapiens Decision, with KPI and Sapiens. Ravi led several decision modeling engagements throughout Freddie Mac, including rollout, training, and adoption of the business decision management system. He also successfully established a Center of Excellence for Decision Modeling in Freddie Mac to ensure consistent application of the decision model principles, methodology, and Sapiens decision software throughout Freddie Mac. Ravi has over 17 years of experience in software industry and over 10 years in mortgage finance. He's a thought leader in the decision modeling, process modeling, and business rules spaces, and has presented at several conferences including MISMO Business Rules Group, Business Process Management Institute, and was a panelist at Business Rules Forum. Ravi completed a leadership and strategy execution program from Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. He has a bachelor in engineering of Nagpur University in India. Ravi, thank you for coming on today, and we are looking forward to have an interesting session. Today the format is slightly different. We will not have a classic presentation, but it will be a dialogue between you and I, and I want to kick that off with the first question. The first question is, with your extensive background in business rules management, why are you focusing on decision management?
Because decision management solves some of the challenges of business rules management. Business rules, it is very hard to organize the rules. And because rules are managed at an independent level, and it is tough to organize it. Decision, on the other side, is groups the rules based on the conclusion in a rule family and then in a decision model. So it makes the organization very straightforward and seamless. Also, decision provides, TDM, decision has 15 principles, and those 15 principles make sure that there are no overlaps or gaps in the rules. Furthermore, it basically forces you to think about all the possible combinations to ensure that the logic is complete. And the logic, what is needed for a decision, is part of the decision. So those were some of the key things which were very hard to manage, or very hard to manage and maintain in business rules side. So if you have, for example, if you have over 100 rules, it is very hard to do the conflict management. It is very hard to look for overlaps. And it is tough to organize those rules and manage the categorization and organization over a long period. So decision management helps, it solves that problem, and that's the reason I decided to adopt this methodology.
Some of people said that a rules approach often is a bottom-up approach versus decision management is top-down. Would you agree with that statement?
Decision model actually can be applied both bottom-up and top-down. We have done it at several client places where we have actually looked at existing rules and build models. And we have done, mostly we do prefer to do top-down, and that is because we're always looking for traceability from business process to the policy, and want to make sure there is a motivation behind each decision and rule family. So we do prefer it from that perspective, but it can be done both ways.
Great. Now, the most important question today actually is, why should a company establish a center of excellence for decision modeling?
Yep. So decision modeling center of excellence comes into picture when you're looking to do a second or third project using decision models. And the reason I say that is, first project, you're not going to, probably don't want to spend time and effort to build a center of excellence if you're not sure that whether you'll be implementing in, again, in other divisions or other groups throughout the organization. And the moment you start looking at second and third project or second or third implementation, that is where you start seeing the value of decision model center of excellence, because the value you can derive by adopting principles, by enforcing policies and procedures, by ensuring consistency across projects, and reusing the decision artifact, all of those things, along with like training resources, building the skill level, everything sort of starts making more sense, and that is the reason like companies start thinking about it at sort of second or third project level. But it is a good practice to start to keep in mind that it's center of excellence when you're doing your first project, because at that point you can start documenting some of the policies and procedures which you'll be leveraging over time.
That's very helpful to know. Now, you mentioned business process management earlier, right? What role does it play in respect to a decision model center of excellence? How are they related to each other?
Business process is sort of the first thing we do on every decision modeling engagement, because that gives us an insight, and as well as provides an overview of what these decision models will be used for, what will be the purpose, and as well as how they are linked to the overall business process. So it provides a traceability, transparency, and on top of it, it can guide the decision execution. So which is basically gives you information on when decisions will be executed within a process.
Now the next question is about where do we start from an organizational perspective? Is it the business, is it the IT, or is it both? What would be the good starting point for establishing a center of excellence?
So before first establishing center of excellence, the key place would be to start to think of, these are some of the considerations, I guess. First one is where does the decision modeling group reside? If it resides in business area, potentially that makes it a case for having a decision model center of excellence in the business area. If it resides in IT, that makes a case for having a decision model center of excellence in the IT side. Also, it can be driven by the architecture and technology architecture. If everything on technology side is centralized, so you have a centralized, let's say, business rules implementation or rules engine for the enterprise, then that makes a case that possibly that structure can be leveraged, and there can be a centralized, there can be center of excellence on the technology side. Also, another thing to be considered there is the organizational maturity. If it's for large organization, there are always these areas which are shared services or sort of common to the enterprise. Those are good places to have a center of excellence group. And another key piece to consider is where you have a good sponsor. So if your sponsor is from business area, then it would probably make a case to have a center of excellence there. But regardless, it doesn't matter as long as the principles and the skills, principles, and it's built on a framework which is sustainable.
Now, we are talking about framework, but what are the components of a Center of Excellence for decision modeling?
So I like to think of it in sort of four group of works in a way. So first one is training and communication, and this is the group which will be sort of responsible for training everyone on decision models and methodology, and the technology side, as well as the best practices, policies, procedures, and sort of reaching out at the industry, right? If there are things have changed, then making sure they're up to date, and that's the training and communication group. And it's based on my experience, it's one of the hardest to set it up. But once you have it established, then it is very easy to grow it. Then second one is the policies and procedure group, so where all the policies, procedures, and guidelines are managed and maintained. The third is more around methodology, which is the decision model methodology or other methodologies which company has built over time can reside. Including some of the white papers, best practices, and other material can be part of this methodology group. The last but not least is the system and tools group, which is responsible for not only keeping the decision tool, but other tools and support services which are required to manage decisions. So for example, if you are using a Sapiens decision, then this group will need to manage the releases and fixes and overall keep it aligned with the roadmap of decision, and they will be publishing best practices for the tools itself, like how to leverage the tool. So those are sort of the four major components as part of the in the COE.
Now, in terms of staffing, we talked now about the components that are relevant, but at the end, it's the people that make it happen, right? So in terms of staffing, what are the different roles which make up the core team? What's your core team? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, core team comprises of several key people, and it's basically first one to start with is the decision architect. Decision architects are responsible for the solution. So they will be responsible for looking at the inputs, outputs, and what goes in the service and the overall solution, whether it meets the business need, business strategy, and as well as aligns with the methodology. So that's the responsibility of decision architect. And as part of if there is another group which want to utilize decision, it's the responsibility of decision architect to figure out whether it is feasible, and if it is feasible to implement decision, then what are the steps to get there. So they play a key role there. Then decision modeler is responsible for looking at the policy, and then based on the policy, authoring the decisions. And those decisions, and then within the Sapiens decision tool, it is expanded a little bit more. Is where they can they can do the testing of the decision model and also perform the reviews and trace it back to the policy. So those are the typical tasks for the decision modeler. The decision trainer. And the decision trainer is responsible for providing training on decision, as well as training on the best practices, policies, procedures, and overall giving an overall understanding of the architecture, because they play the role of going across the groups and understanding the architecture for the overall implementation. So it's not just one implementation or two implementation. Trainer has to understand how everything is implemented for the organization, and then provide training on TDM, and then also provide training on various implementation within the tool in the enterprise. So they do that. And then there is an application and product SME, which is typically your lead product SMEs, was responsible for looking at the defining requirements for the tool if there is a need for enhancement, looking at planning for the release, and then doing UAT and implementing it in production, coordination, and all that kind of stuff comes into application product SME. And they also are responsible for authoring best practices for the tool, how to leverage tool, and what are the ways to handle, what are the possible ways to perform things, and then and handling of formulas, functions, and there are several other things they do as part of that job. Then the last piece is governance lead or project managers. They are the ones which basically can be assigned to an engagement. So let's say the new department is interested in adopting decision model. You can have a lead, work with them, identify their requirement, work with the architect, and work with all the other modelers, trainers, to make sure that the adoption is smooth. They can also play a role where they are the lead for interaction with the industry experts and things like that. So those are the major roles which you'll see in Center of Excellence.
Ravi, would you be able to quantify how many people you would consider in a core team? You would need one person for each role, or how would you structure a core team?
Core team typically is at least one architect, or ideally two. Then you have modelers can have 4. Trainer again 2. Application product SME minimum 2. And the governance and lead also around 2. So that's just the minimum you need, and depending upon how many projects you have going in parallel and how you want to plan for the work, this should be sufficient. It can be planned for.
Very good. From your experience in training, how many people would you see reasonable to be trained by a Center of Excellence? Maybe if you look into your experience.
Training is one of those things which need to, even though it sounds like it's a sort of a once in a year kind of activity. Actually, it's quite frequent. It's not only the training for decision modelers or people who will be actually working on decision. It's also the training to educate everyone around it. So you have to look at the people from business policy areas. You have to look at from IT organization. You have to look at from data side, glossary administrators and stewards. So, and then the senior management. So trainer's job is to make sure everyone has an understanding of decision model, what the team is doing, and since it is a new topic, there is a lot of demand for the training.
Thank you. Now, very related to training is obviously certification, right? Is that really necessary? What is the benefit of being certified?
So it is now in the TDM space or decision modeling space, KPI certification are very well recognized. We see it across all our clients. There is a huge demand that they want to get certified. Everyone is eager to know how to get certified, and they are actively working on it. And it is basically takes a long time to get certified. They are like, for example, TDM practitioner is typically requires a 6-month experience on a project, written exam, and then oral after that. So, and that 6 months have to be on the decision modeling project from start to finish. So those are some of the requirements, which makes it a little bit harder. But we would like to, once someone is certified, I would like to see that that person should be able to handle a decision modeling engagement independently. So that is the key focus there, and that's the reason we keep it at that level. There's another certification for trainer, and that is once someone is certified as a trainer, they can conduct training, official training on the TDM. Then we're working on the TDM architect certification, which will require more experience and more architectural level experience, and it will have a prerequisite of practitioner and trainer. So those are some of the certification which, if anyone interested, can look at.
So it seems that the certification also serves as a quality assurance method within an enterprise. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. In fact, we take it one more level up. We say on some of our implementation that to be a peer reviewer or someone who has responsibility to review decision models should have to have a practitioner certification. So if they don't have a practitioner certification, they should not be a reviewer. So we make those rules so that way the quality of TDM is maintained, and it makes sure that there are no architectural issues and the structural issues in the decision model.
It brings us to our next question. After it is established, how does an organization maintain and grow a center of excellence? What's the future, if you have one?
So the key there is to keep it up to date. Make sure you're aligned with the industry best practices, because again, it is an evolving area where methodology is evolving based on the needs and as well as based on the client feedback. So we need to make sure that COE is doing their job. They need to align with the industry expert and industry best practices. The second is continue to invest in governance. This is tough to do, especially for organizations who are looking to cut costs and things like that. But the key there is by third, fourth project it starts paying off. It pays off in a way where a typical project, let's say, takes you 8 to 10 people to complete it. By having an established center of excellence, leveraging your previous projects and building on it, you may be able to do with 2 or 3 based on some of our clients' experience. So it does definitely cuts down on the costs, but it does require some initial upfront investment. So those are the kind of things which a company need to do. The another one is keep your policies and procedures up to date. And the last piece is this is very interesting, and it's sort of a topic in itself, is try to build reference architecture and adopt it across enterprise, which will help guide the solutions correctly. So that you can build your decision model reference architecture. So anytime there is a business rules related or decision related business requirement, your architecture group or the other groups or business area can look at the reference architecture and guide them properly. So these kind of things are very helpful if you have a large organization which is trying to figure out that how to enforce some of the decision modeling practices and how to grow the center of excellence. So these are some of the things that organization can do.
Now, how can KPI help those who are interested in establishing a Center of Excellence?
So KPI has experience and huge implementation experience with several large clients on the COE side. Have a framework which has been proven, is been implemented across several clients. We do coaching and mentoring, and we also provide certification and training, and also have tons of material around it, which can be leveraged and basically can be worked with the client and created and help them establishing Center of Excellence.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Now, so you mentioned tons of free material. Are there any key reference documents which can aid the establishment of a Center of Excellence? Do you have something to start the process of establishing the Center of Excellence?
Yeah, we have, of course, our training materials, our tons of white papers. Also, we have a business operating model handbook, which can guide you step by step how to establish Center of Excellence, and as well as what are the key components in Center of Excellence. Then you have reference architecture guideline, how to build an reference architecture, which can enforce the guidelines across enterprise. We have policy procedure templates and what possibly you can do. What are the key things to look for when you're establishing? You learned it over time that there are some things which are really common across our clients. So we can help with those common things instead of reinventing the wheel. We can look at the things which we have already learned over time and build something easily and establish a Center of Excellence, which is, first one probably took us a very long time, but over time we have learned the best practices and how to establish it quickly. So we can definitely help from material and as well as the mentoring and coaching side.
In that regard, how much adoption for the individual client is there? So are you implementing it exactly the same way, or do you differentiate? Are there some modifications depending on the individual clients?
There's always some differences between the client because of course, no two businesses are alike. There are always different challenges. There can be different organizational challenges. There can be different sponsorship challenges. There can be different structural challenges. So we have to look at all those things and then figure out what is the optimal path to establish a Center of Excellence. And those are the things we look at. We have to do a study. We look at look at our experience, and basically then we establish a path to build Center of Excellence.
So basically the reference materials that you mentioned serve as a means of an accelerated rollout that is specific for each client. Is that correct?
Yes. So it can, you see, its reference material is good and it can be leveraged to give you a jump start on some of these things. But it has to be looked from the view of what the client requirements are. And based on that, it needs to be customized. Sometimes it still happens that we have to author new material. We have to supplement it, and that's typical for Center of Excellence because there are unique cases and there are scenarios which need to be tackled for each individual client.
Now that brings us to the end of the webinar today. I would like to point out that we have webinars every next Thursday in a month, and I would like to ask Ravi about his experience with establishing Center of Excellence. what is the biggest takeaway that you had in your career throughout establishing a number of those Center of Excellences?
Biggest takeaway is when you're doing your first project, I think I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, when you're doing your first project and you think, if you can start thinking about Center of Excellence and start putting together a sort of high-level framework of what you'll be doing when you establish Center of Excellence, that is the biggest thing. Because what typically ends up happening is you start thinking of Center of Excellence by third project, but you don't know how you did first and second project. So the sooner you start thinking about it, sooner you plan. And it seems so simple, but when you're implementing first project, it's always trying to just satisfy the requirement of the project. But it'll be good if you can think through Center of Excellence and start putting some foundation for the future work. You can always leverage it, and it can be very helpful.
In your presentation, you pointed out that basically a Center of Excellence is in constant motion, right? It's always updated. It's a living organism, right? How long would you think it takes until a Center of Excellence can be operational? And we understand that companies are different, right? But you have a rule of thumb how long it might take?
So operational, probably in the first 1 or 2 months. Productive and start returning on the investment. Again, as I think I mentioned it earlier, but typically your third or fourth project where you start seeing the direct return of Center of Excellence. And it is a very good experience when you see those returns, because without building anything, without creating anything, you're seeing that the projects are getting implemented with the best policies, procedures, and the methodology.
What was the biggest surprise ever in helping people establishing a Center of Excellence?
There was a policy which was very critical for an organization, and they were trying to publish it out quickly. There were some challenges, and they gave it to the Center of Excellence to review and see whether it can be implemented using decision model. And so the team, or in fact not only team, 1 or 2 people actually looked at it, created a decision model, identified gap all over the policy, and returned it back in a couple of days with a structure of decision, explaining what are the other things needed in the policy. So that was one of the biggest wins I've seen, where when you have tools, technology, and methodology in place, you can produce that kind of analysis using a models. And it was for big surprise to the management as well and the policy area that we were able to look at a plain document and able to analyze to that extent, which they have been working on for months. So that was one of the interesting piece.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you so much for taking time today. For all the listeners who are interested in learning more about the decision model or how to establish a Center of Excellence, please visit our website, www.kpiusa.com, or become a member at our LinkedIn group at The Decision Model. We have a number of white papers, webinar recordings like this, articles, and also templates available at our website in our download center. Or just meet us. We are regularly speakers at IIBA events or other industry events. Come and talk with us and share your decision models with us. very interested to talk with you, and we wish you a great day and look forward to welcoming you at our next webinar. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.